Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of College Football Pros. I am joined, as always, by my sidekick, or I'm his sidekick, haven't decided that yet, Drew Van Jura. My name is Nicholas Vlinchak, and we're excited to talk about one of the big boys, a conference that has really been emerging over the last several years in the Pac-12. Drew, I don't think it's too far off the beaten path to say that this conference is getting good enough to the point where they might be right up there with the SEC in terms of overall talent and visibility. What do you think?
Yeah, I can agree with that statement. I think of the Power Five. If we have to rank the Power Five, I think the SEC still is the top. We can agree to that. And then I think after that, you really have to look at the Pac-12, and you can make a good argument they are the number 2 conference, top to bottom. And that's just what I like to do, because everybody says about the Big Ten. The Big Ten is top heavy with Ohio State, and Wisconsin the past couple of years. They need Michigan to be better. They need Nebraska to be what it once was. Northwestern has had their chances here and there. But I think top to bottom, the Pac-12 with Oregon, Stanford, Washington, on this side, there's that, you look at USC, Arizona State, UCLA, Arizona, Utah for the years, they would always seem to upset somebody, heading into the Pac-12. So, yeah, this conference is reliable, if nothing else. You're going to have 4 or 5 to maybe 6 teams that are, arguably the top 25 in the nation.
I don't want to make that seem like it's an attack against the Big Ten or the ACC or the Big 12. My issue with the Big Ten is I just think, I don't know if top heavy is the best way to put it, but I guess that is the best way to put it. I look at some of their teams that are like at the bottom, and I'm just, it's not there for me. I think the Pac-12 overall seems to be more full and more exciting at this point. And a lot of that can change, because now with the Big Ten, you've got some bigger name coaches who have come in. Recruiting should hopefully get better, and they should be able to take that next step up. But I'm in love with the Pac-12. I've become a really big fan over the last several years. I like that they typically end up having some weekday games. I'm a much bigger fan of the weekday games, because on the weekend, I flip a lot. If I'm watching, I have to, because when you're playing fantasy, like I'm trying to watch, and if you're running a bunch of lineups, I'm watching 6, 7, 8 different games at a time, looking at ESPN Gamecast to see what's happening. So it's really a somewhat awful environment. I'm like an accountant at tax time when college football is on. I got 4 different computers open. I've got the TV on. I've got the TV on in the other room turned up real loud so I could just hear other college football. It's a really uncomfortable environment for my girlfriend. I'm not quite sure why she's still with me.
Yeah, well, don't we all ask that question? Honestly, no, let's not talk about that.
Right. I think it's either because of my money or we'll just leave that one alone for a while. And my money is not very great either, so we'll just say that she's just a really loving person. So.
She is. If anybody,
she has to be. She has to tolerate the fact that I'll sit in my room for 4 hours. I get grounded. I have to go to my room to talk about college football.
There is no TV. There's no nothing. Back in the day when we were kids, there's no PlayStation. There's no Nintendo. No TV. That's kind of what if she did that to you one day? Like one Saturday, she was like, "No TV today." What would you do?
I'd punch holes in the wall.
Oh, okay, I always make sure you wouldn't punch her in the face, and then then we can talk about
violence against women is like the lowest form of male existence.
All joking aside, it is.
Yeah, but seriously, I would break everything around me.
Oh, okay, so and then you would take your money that you don't have and have to replace it all.
No, I wouldn't. Absolutely not. I told you, I don't like spending my money on things I need to spend my money on. I want to spend my money on stuff that I randomly see and want to buy.
What if you break your popcorn machine like you told us about in the previous podcast about the CUSA?
Buy another one.
You would buy another one. Awesome.
Maybe 2.
Wow. Just in case you break it again.
No, we don't have one in the bedroom, and we watch a lot of TV right before we're going to go to bed. So
how awesome
we don't have to walk all the way out to the dining room.
That's awesome. That's a great idea, man.
I'm full of great ideas, or I think it should probably just be simplified to saying I'm full of ideas.
Right, yeah, that's
great
true.
They are not so much.
full of something. Anyhow.
That is correct, Drew. So let's talk about the Pac-12 North. I'm excited. You're excited. I'm looking at the name of the first team on the list, and I'm excited already. And we're going to start with California, the 6th-ranked passing offense, the 87th-ranked rushing offense, the 13th-ranked overall offense, the worst passing defense in the country, the 38th-ranked rushing defense, the 5th worst overall defense. They scored 38.3 points. They allowed 39.8 points, which was the 6th most in the country. How could you have such a prolific passing attack and your defense be so ill-equipped to handle that? Is that a product of the conference with a lot of pass-heavy teams, or is that just a really poorly constructed defense?
It's just a bad defense, bad recruiting. You miss on guys. You let some guys go. Some guys transfer. They gave up 61 touchdowns last year. That's unbelievable to me. 61 touchdowns.
I love them.
For fantasy, I absolutely love them.
So you know who I'm a buyer of this year?
I'm going to go on a limb and say Jared Goff.
Dude, first of all, he goes so far under the radar, and it's such a simple, common sense reason why. Because almost everyone he's playing against is going to have a bigger game than him.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. How many players had their best offensive performance last year against this Cal defense?
Connor Halliday. Washington State threw for 700 yards. And by the way, Goff threw for 500 in that game. That's what
I'm saying. I'm reasonably sure that the big game that Nelson Spruce had might have been against Cal. USC and Cody Kessler, I talk about him constantly in his overall dominance of Cal. Like, it's just known that Cal is there to be picked on.
I mean, hands down. And that doesn't make any sense when you're in a Pac-12 and you're in California. I know it's Northern California, but you should not recruit that bad on defense. And again, I don't know if that's just because of the scheme. Kids, they're missing on recruits. They're not recruiting the right area. I don't know what it is. But Jared Goff is a guy that he's going to have a fantastic year again, but they may only win 4 games, which is sad.
He's a junior, if I'm not mistaken. So
he's only a junior. He's coming out, though, probably, right?
I would think so. The craziest thing to me is he's going to most likely, barring an injury, end up as Cal's all-time leading passer at the end of this year.
Yeah,
if he were to come back next year, I mean, there'd be 7,000 yards between him and the next player.
Oh, hands down. I mean, he already has thrown for 53 touchdowns in his career at Cal. So, I mean, he's well on his way. If he would stay for his senior year, he'd be well on his way to break every record.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just insane because, like I said, like people look at the matchups when they're putting together their daily fantasy team, and they're like, okay, who's playing Cal?
Yeah.
And they don't say, Jared Goff has thrown for a bunch of yards and a bunch of touchdowns. I should possibly consider him too. No, everyone just cares about who's playing Cal. But here's Goff kind of under the radar, and he's putting up these gaudy stats, and he's good. And, I mean, I'm just like sitting there the more the season went on last year, and I'm like, man, this kid is just so fun to watch, and all of the players that he has around him just put him in such a good position to continue to grow. This is just scary thinking about how good this kid could be.
And another scary aspect of this offense is Daniel Lasco at running back. This kid has immense talent, but they're always so far behind in their games that this kid just catches a bunch of balls out of the backfield, which is fine. But when early in the game, when he's running the ball, he's so dynamic. It's unbelievable.
He was definitely productive with what he did last year, so that was certainly a major plus. There's no other way to put it. The hope would be that they could just, and it's so much easier said than done, but the defense needs to play better so that
that's the understatement of the century.
Yeah, that they don't have to pass as much so that Lasco could have some opportunity to really get working, and he's shown, especially early in games, what his capabilities are when you put the ball in his hand. And then on the receiver side, you lose Chris Harper and return Kenny Lawler, Steven Anderson, Bryce Treggs, and more. This is going to be a very strong team this year on offense. I mean, I'm really excited for what this year holds for the offensive side of Cal football.
Yeah, I mean, and they have probably the coolest offensive scheme name as the Bear Raid offense. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, that's just fun. That's just fun to say. You go, oh, the Bear Raid offense. That's awesome. But yeah, this offensive side of the ball has a ton of potential. The defense, you can't say anything more than just get better.
So
they're horrible. They've been horrible.
Yeah. So let's talk about their defense. What do you think of their defense?
It's horrible. They allowed.
Did you say that already?
42 touchdown passes. Are you kidding me?
I mean, that breaks out to
That's
what, like
unbelievable.
3.5 a game?
That's the most ever by a Power 5 team. Wow. I mean, that should be assumed, but that just for our viewers out there that maybe not be, with stats and everything, that is the most ever by a Power 5 team. 42 touchdown passes. That's just stupid numbers.
Yeah, I can't take this defense seriously. I mean, I'm not going to listen to someone who's telling me how vastly they're going to improve. That's definitely got to be a see it to believe it thing. And for the past couple of years, they've been the laughingstock of the Pac-12. So I'm not buying. This is going to be another exploitable defense this year and puts so much pressure on Goff and the rest of his offense to do more than it really should have to do to try to win ball games.
Yeah, like you said, there's just nothing more to say than this defense has got to get better, and they might lose games, 45-36. But I don't see them having a winning season this year. I honestly don't.
Same page. Moving on to what is probably the biggest story in this conference, in my opinion, to Oregon, who had the 10th ranked passing offense last year, the 22nd ranked rushing offense, the 3rd overall offense in the country, the 111th ranked passing defense, the 62nd ranked rushing defense, the 89th ranked overall defense. They scored an astronomical 45.4 points, and they allowed only 23.6. That 23.6, I mean, the 111th ranked passing defense, and you allow 23.6 points. I mean, that is the definition of bend but don't break, but it also goes to show you how inflated statistics can be and why it's not always that important. Why do you think they are 111th ranked? Could it be because they scored 20 more points than their opponents and they had to air it out to try to catch up?
Yeah, I really do. This is the same thing with the quick strike offense that I've been kind of talking about with a lot of these teams, previously. When you score so quickly, your defense is tired. And then when you also score so quickly, the offense on the other side of the ball, has to throw the ball and they can't sit back and wait. And this defense was tested a ton. But like you said, the bend don't break, that's to a T, this Oregon defense. And that stat is skewed because this defense had NFL talent. And, a couple of guys got injured before the season. So this defense has the capability, to definitely move up. I don't know how far, but they have the opportunity to move up. But they're going to be tested early and often.
No question. And I think the biggest story here and maybe in the Pac-12 is who is heir apparent to Marcus Mariota. I know that it seemed at the end of the year it would be Jeff Locke, but then the news broke out that Eastern Washington transfer Vernon Adams was going to come to Oregon, and he had a skill set that's similar to Mariota. Obviously, nobody is going to be Marcus Mariota. So the public opinion kind of became swayed toward Adams because they saw how exciting he was in the limited chances he got against FBS opponents like Washington. So Adams, I believe, this week is going to officially become a part of this school and a part of this program.
Yeah, and it's actually very alarming that it's August 2nd when we're recording this, and he hasn't really been a part of this team at all. I know football is football, but when you come to an Oregon team and a Mark Helfrich-led team, the terminology is going to be so much different, and the vast majority of plays are going to be, so different from Eastern Washington. And they have a ton of talent in the backfield with Royce Freeman and Thomas Tyner. So that's going to take the ease and the pressure off him a little bit. But if he can't come in and get that playbook quickly, Lockie might be the guy that starts the first half of the season.
Wouldn't doubt that at all. I think my favorite player on this team this year is Royce Freeman. Scary to think that this is just his second year.
Yeah.
And, the offensive line should hold up enough. They're losing some starters. Their career starts drop. I get that. But Freeman could definitely end up being one of the top backs in the country. And the way I always look at it, it just seems like a little more common sense that if you're losing your starting quarterback and you have to reform this offense, you're probably going to rely on your run more than, just tossing the quarterback out there and saying, get this right. So I think that's going to help him this year, but make no mistake, you just lose Keenan Lowe and you return Byron Marshall, Darren Carrington, Devin Allen, Dwayne Stanford, Pharaoh Brown, and Charles Nelson. And you know who else comes back this year?
Tell me.
Braylon Addison.
Yeah, the receivers on this team are fantastic. Allen and Carrington, they're question marks heading into this fall camp. Carrington with the suspension, a lot of people don't know if he's going to be back with the team. Devin Allen had ACL surgery. They fully expect him to be healthy, but how he responds to that is a question mark. Pharaoh Brown got hurt, I heard. So there are also some question marks when you're led by Marshall, Stanford, and Braylon Addison. Those guys, your top three guys, it doesn't matter who else you have because you have three legit number one guys for Vernon Adams or Jeff Lockie. I think Vernon Adams is a more dynamic playmaker. He can run, he can pass. So when you're looking at that, I really take that into consideration, and I hold that as a higher level than I would be at a Lockie who, is basically a pro type drop back passer, doesn't like to really run. So that's just my opinion on that. I am just extremely high on Vernon Adams. This kid coming into this Oregon team, I love it. That you can't ask for a better fit to replace a guy like Mariota.
You definitely have to hope that it's going to be there because Oregon has been one of the most exciting schools for several years. You want that tradition to continue. All the talent in the world. The defense, to me, I think that they're going to be good. I don't know. I think the points scored is going to change on both sides of the ball. I don't think 45.4 points is going to be their offensive output. I don't think 23.6 points is going to be their defensive output. I think they're definitely going to level out. I do think they're still going to score far more than they allow, but it could drop from 22 points to 14 points.
Yeah, I agree with that. Their offense is going to be more methodical this year as last year where it was just huge play after huge play. I think Vernon Adams can really lead them on, 15, yard or 15 play drives, where Mariota would have been, 3 plays on the field. So that dynamic will change, but that will also help the defense. So I think you look at a downtick on the offensive side of the ball, but an uptick on the defensive side of the ball.
So here's the $1 million question from my perspective. So much was made out of the fact that Braxton Miller was lost last year. And then as the season went on, that JT Barrett was lost last year. And these were like big, serious, consequential injuries to the national champions. But Oregon going into that game had lost a tremendous amount. My curiosity is, why does it seem that even after this game has been played that there had been more of a focus on what Ohio State had lost than what Oregon had lost? Because Oregon, number-wise, had lost far more than what Ohio State did.
Yeah, but it's the next man up mentality. And Urban Meyer had recruited better. Tressel had recruited better, if you want to consider it that, with a lot of guys. But the next man behind Braxton Miller was JT Barrett. The drop-off was different in different aspects, but on par at the quarterback position as the same. And then the drop-off to Cardell Jones was, again, different aspects. So, and you look at Oregon, the drop-off from Mariota to Lockie was like the Grand Canyon. And that's no offense to Lockie. That's just how good Mariota was in that offense.
I agree. All I'm trying to say is Ifo Ekpreolumu went down. It's almost like some of this, they didn't want to make this any of the narrative of the national championship game.
Because the guy who replaced Olumu, he didn't do nearly as well as Olumu was projected to do or had done in the past. When JT Barrett came in, he produced just like Braxton Miller. When Cardell came in, he produced just like JT Barrett. So there's a difference between, your recruits sitting behind your number ones and number twos. And it's just the different coaching styles, I guess, is a better.
That's not the point I'm trying to drive. The way you're looking at it is you're just trying to say that Oregon had less of a productive next man up, which I'm not disagreeing with because it's painfully obvious that that's what happened. My curiosity is why was it such a big deal, the Braxton injury in the spring and then the JT Barrett injury where it was the end of the world, but it didn't seem like that could be the situation for Oregon when they lost Pharaoh Brown, when Ifo Ekpreolumu went down, when they had a couple of receivers who weren't able to play in the title game. It just seemed like everybody was supposed to just keep their mouth shut and not say that, like it was going to be. It brought too much of a. It brought too much of a narrative to the national championship game. You don't want anyone to feel like there is an asterisk, which it's not, because I'll be the first person to always say injuries happen. If you get a lot of injuries, that was just tough luck. That's all. That's how it happens.
It's the position too. I mean, it's the quarterback position as compared to a defensive back or tight end or a receiver. I don't know. I think it's the sexy position is the quarterback in college football. So when a quarterback goes down, look at Mariota when he got hurt in that game. I mean, it was the end of the world. I mean, those commentators, probably wanted to jump off a bridge because it was the end of the world. So I think that's the difference when you look at, positions getting hurt and guys going down.
No arguments for me on that. Quarterback's obviously the most important position in terms of what they are designed to do. My whole issue was just like it was 6 players to 1, and that's losing these are 6 starters that got hurt, right? 6 starters.
Yeah,
that's pretty significant. I don't think it would have changed the impact of the game. Ohio State was going to win that game. That's not the point I'm trying to drive home. I just think sometimes it's funny how the narratives work out where it was such a big deal. When Barrett went down, especially because they were in that position where they were, generating steam towards the Big Ten title. They were generating steam towards getting into the playoff, but it just didn't seem like that same concern was given to Oregon. That's it. And you and I have discussed previously, when we discussed the SEC, that there's biases and they happen. And that's just my personal belief, is I felt like that Ohio State had become the darling, and the media didn't want to do anything to put any kind of narrative there to suggest that they had an easier path after they clawed so hard. That's what it's all about. We talk about wrestling all the time, and wrestling is the perfect example, because what are you trying to do in wrestling? You're trying to sell a story. You're trying to sell a believable situation to someone. You're trying to make them buy in and believe that what they see transpiring in front of them is real life. I don't see there being much difference, to be completely honest with you, in this college football thing. They went for dramatics. They went for what was going to draw revenue. And there was no point for the media to talk about how much of an impact that this was going to have on Oregon, because it lessened the extent. It could have potentially lessened the extent of what the win could have meant for Ohio State. Dealing with all hypotheticals here, I just don't like when that stuff happens.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely disagree with you there, but I don't know how you say Ohio State was ever a media darling when the final rankings came out, where people were outraged. How does Ohio State get in when they lost to Virginia Tech and TCU and Baylor, who were ranked 2, 3, 4 at any point in the season? I don't know if Ohio State has ever been the media darling, and I think the only other team hated in the media, in the 4-letter networks, that are hated more than Ohio State is Miami. So I have to firmly disagree with you there. I understand your point. But again, I think you look at the positions where it was impacted, and you look at guys, getting suspended for, I don't even know what Carrington did, to be honest with you. I completely forget. I don't know if it was drugs or he missed practice or something. I don't know. But I don't know if you want to start talking about every team has injuries. Every team has guys go down. And when you look at an Urban Meyer coach team, he recruited better than Mark Helfrich, and he outcoached Helfrich in that game. And I know it's not all Urban versus Mark, but the staffs at Ohio State were more prepared than Oregon.
Like I said, I'm not totally disagreeing with you. I'm just saying it had picked up steam to the point where Ohio State was becoming what people hope for. This is the Steve Austin mentality. You like Steve Austin because he does the stuff that you wish you could do. He kicked his boss in the stomach, knocked him on the ground, punched him in the face. That translates to people. People root for the underdog. Once Ohio State made it in, yes, guys like Stephen A. Smith and the guys that are never going to have their opinion swayed and what they say is their Bible, I get that. But I think it was picking up enough steam that the narrative was there that, oh my God, Ohio State might do this. It's just my opinion. I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm fine, and you bring up relevant and poignant thoughts as to why that's not the case. I appreciate that. You know what I mean? I'm not here to try to tell you that I'm right in this situation. A lot of times I will. You know that.
Well, I mean, in this situation, I'm just telling you your opinion's wrong, is all I'm saying here.
That's fine. I'm gonna still hold tight to it. I'm gonna put it under my pillow when I sleep. And I'm just always going to feel that way. I'm going to feel that the media didn't do enough justice in this situation to enhance the fact that they had a lot of injuries they were dealing with. Again, I say it doesn't affect what happens. Ohio State was going to win that game. They were the better team. They wanted it more. Those are all the things that that's how it happens. When you want something more and you're going to push harder than the next guy, you're going to get rewarded for it. It's just how it works in sports. You know what I mean? That's why Russell Wilson entered into the NFL and knocked Flynn right off of his pedestal. And that's
Absolutely.
why Russell Wilson is in the position he's in today, because he wanted it more, he was hungrier, and he went in there and did it. So
He got paid big time.
Regardless, good conversation. We'll move on to Oregon State. Last year, they had the 32nd ranked passing offense in the country, the 113th ranked rushing offense for the 75th ranked overall offense, the 94th ranked passing defense, the 53rd ranked rushing defense, the 76th ranked overall defense. They scored 25.6 points, and they allowed 31.6. And they're another team, just like Oregon, to a much lesser extent, who are going to have to replace their all-time leading passer in Sean Mannion, who's moved on to the NFL, and that leaves a lot of question marks open at that position.
Yeah, this team to me is so confusing. I mean, you bring in Gary Anderson after Mike Riley went to Nebraska, so you bring in a guy from Wisconsin, and you have one of the best running backs, arguably in the nation, in Storm Woods. I mean, he has a talent to be one of the best. But yeah, quarterback-wise, you have zero experience, to replace Sean Mannion, Nick Mitchell, Marcus McMarion. I'm going to try to pronounce that. McMarion, right? Is that how we're saying it?
Yes, that's great.
All right, good enough for me. So whoever gets that job, Victor Bolden, top 10 receiver in the nation. I mean, wouldn't you say?
I don't know if I'd go that high on him. But I'm not going to disagree with you. He's a quality receiver without a question.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the fantasy productions, the past couple of years, he's always been around the top. I know that had a lot to do with Mannion. So, this team, if they can figure out the quarterback position as to whoever they put in, I think Gary Anderson and this team is poised to have a better year, I guess. And by that, I still mean probably bottom half of the Pac-12, but for an Oregon State team that struggled the past couple of years, I think this team is on the upswing with the talent they have coming in. That's all.
What I like about this is the concept of Gary Anderson coming in. I think he will allow more use of the quarterback in other ways than Mike Riley did, which is good because Seth Collins, who could potentially start, is much more mobile. And we didn't really see that from Mannion at Oregon State. So the hope is that you have a more diverse type of quarterback who can get things done with his feet. Also, Gary Anderson had a lot of good running backs at Wisconsin. I don't think we could disagree with this fact. Right. So my gut reaction would be that whoever's going to be the running back here should see an uptick in production, and that's Storm Woods. I may not be as high on him as saying he's one of the best in the country, but he's
up there.
He's a solid producer. I have him in my notes as the one guy on this team I'm definitely watching. Bolden and Jordan Villeman, I just don't know how much I really like them in sustainability. Bolden had a fair amount of catches and yards, but did not have the touchdowns that you would want it from a fantasy perspective. So that inconsistency bothers me, especially if you're going to break in a new quarterback, and especially if it's a quarterback that might be willing to run more. And this is a coach that's coming in who has been on a team that has been a very strong running team. Doesn't spell good things for the wide receivers on this team. So my gut reaction is that more of the focus is going to be on Storm Woods as they try to develop whoever is the next guy that comes in to play quarterback.
Yeah, I completely agree, which is why I actually probably am a little higher on Storm Woods than I should be. But, with the instability at the quarterback position, the receivers not being, outside of Bolden, not really that, that upside guy you see. So I'm really high on him. And that offensive line, along with those tight ends coming in and some instability. So this team is going to struggle on offense. I really, until Anderson can get his guys in there in the next couple of years, I think this team struggles, with 2 to 3 wins for the next couple of years.
What do you think about the defense?
Interesting. I mean, they're moving to a 3-4, which right off the top you go, 3-4, whatever. But they've got some really big defensive linemen that can play, and it just plug the middle, plug the holes. A couple of them, have academic issues, a couple transfers, a couple here and there, a couple recruits. So this defense, to me, has the ability to be better, but I think take a step back, transitioning to a new formation, new guys, new roles. So I just think this team as a whole takes a step back.
It's where I'm at with you. I think the D-line is probably the highlight of what they're doing here. The linebackers and defensive back take a pretty major hit. Tough for them to reach last year's standards. I think that this could be a bottom 25% defense by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. It's like I said, I think Gary Anderson will have them going in the right direction in a couple years, but I think right now they're going to struggle with the high up-tempo offense of the Pac-12.
Moving along, we'll go to Stanford, who had the 66th ranked passing offense, the 72nd ranked rushing offense, the 77th ranked overall offense, the 8th ranked passing defense, the 7th ranked rushing defense, the 3rd ranked overall defense. They scored 27.2 points, and they allowed 16.4, which I think is the number 4 in the country. What does this Stanford team have to do this year to make it to the next level?
Yeah, I think this team, led by David Shaw and Kevin Hogan at the quarterback position, this is a guy that I know you're high on. And I'll let you talk about him a little more, but I look at the running backs, and I'll real fast talk about the running backs and Christian McCaffrey. I think this is a guy that he has Heisman sleeper written all over him. And I'm not going to sit here and say that he should be right now or shouldn't be, but I think he has potential. If Hogan takes that next step in the passing game and opens up that running game, I think we're sitting here at the end of the season where McCaffrey could be talked about that outside sleeper for the Heisman. And that is very, very going far out on that limb, but I really think he has, and this team has that ability this year.
Yeah, I like him. I like Redmond Wright. I think McCaffrey is definitely the one who's going to have to pick up the steam. In regards to Kevin Hogan, he didn't perform poorly last year, but he didn't really do enough that made you invest in him being a serious playoff, in him being a leader of a serious playoff contending team. So for him, it's going to be all about taking the next step forward. They've got one of the best O-lines in the country. That helps the quarterback. That helps the running back. My concern here is at the receiver position. Ty Montgomery is gone. He didn't have the best year to depart with last year. It leaves Devin Kajusti and Austin Hooper as the top targets, Hooper being their tight end. They have a lot of tight end depth. But for me, this offense, this is, when we talked about the Conference USA, we were talking about game managers, and this is what I think Kevin Hogan really needs to be able to do, because this defense is still going to be a very good defense. The offense is going to have to produce, and it's going to be all about Hogan being able to handling the assets that he has on the field properly, knowing when to make good reads, knowing when to hand the ball off, knowing when to run, to get a few yards. So that's what he's going to have to take the next step in his decision-making process.
Yeah, and if he is capable of doing that, this is what I'm saying, that McCaffrey at the end of the season, with Redmond Wright and Barry Sanders Jr., giving him, some time on the sideline to heal up and do some things. This is an interesting team to me, because this team could either have a really good season and possibly beat a Cinderella and upset Oregon to take this side, or they're going to be battling Oregon State at the bottom. I really don't see a middle ground here. They're either going to be good or they're going to be bad.
Definitely.
If Kevin Hogan, to what you're saying, if he doesn't take that next step and if he regresses, this team is going to struggle. But I hope that doesn't happen, because I like Hogan and I like this team. But man,
definitely a make or break year in this program. Moving along, we'll go to Washington, who was the 89th ranked passing offense, the 42nd ranked rushing offense, the 77th ranked overall offense, the 6th worst passing defense in the country, the 22nd best rushing defense, the 80th ranked overall defense. They scored 30.2, they allowed 24.8, and they're going to be losing their quarterback Siler Miles this year.
Yeah, and Chris Peterson from Boise State fame, comes into his second season having to find a new quarterback. I don't know where they're going. I've heard KJ Carter-Samuels. I've also heard Jake Browning. So I don't know. Yeah, that's tough, because I hate when we're sitting here talking going, there could be two possibilities of quarterback. So, the old adage is if you have two quarterbacks, you have zero quarterbacks. So that is really going to be a big issue. The ground game, with Dwayne Washington, that's good, but is it good enough to compete with Stanford and Oregon on this side?
Well, when your offensive line's losing 149 career starts, I'm going to probably side towards no. There's just enough on this team on the offensive side of the ball that gives me great concern. You don't know who your quarterback's going to be. Your offensive line is in shambles. Your best bet is going to be Dwayne Washington to carry the load. 1,000 yards still isn't out of the question, but it's going to be a large portion of what I think this offense can produce. On the receiving side of the ball, you've got Jadon Mickens, you've got John Ross, but with that unknown at quarterback, not knowing how they're going to work this system, it's tough to really want to put faith into any one of those guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Ross, he was the one that got hurt last year, if I remember correctly, right? Or did he get hurt? Yeah, so it's going to be interesting how he responds with that. So I don't know. This defense is going to struggle mightily, losing Shaq Thompson at the linebacking core. They've been with graduation and experience and depth. So this defense is going to struggle all over the place.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the defense either. The DL, the line and the linebackers lose a ton of starters. Pass rush looks like it's going to be weak. The defensive backs look like they could be good, but, I mean, you're not going to put up good statistics if you're getting tested all the time. They're going to be soft. It's just going to be, there's a lot to make me think that this defense could circle the drain in 2015.
Yeah, I don't see where this team, I mean, middle of the road Pac-12, I think they finish. They probably go to a bowl game, but man, I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here saying Washington State, what could have been. Or Washington, what could have been. I apologize.
Well, thanks for the organic intro to Washington State here, who had, get ready for this, the number one passing offense in 2014, the worst rushing offense, 39.8 yards per game, 7th overall offense, the second worst passing defense, the 40th rushing defense, the 99th overall defense. They scored 31.8. They allowed 38.6. This team, more than any other team, is a polar opposite. They have no balance whatsoever between the pass and run.
No, and you lose Connor Holiday, right? So who do you replace him with? Can you replace him?
Oh, Luke Falk did a tremendous job in relief of Holiday in 2014. So for me, there's no beat skipped. I think he could put up numbers pretty similar to what Holiday did. That's what that offense is built for, and I think Luke Falk is right there to be able to take advantage of that opportunity.
I mean, losing your top two receivers and Isaiah Myers and Vince Maule will definitely hinder that. But they return some talented guys they've recruited fairly well for a Washington State team. So the running game is where I just have no idea where they're going to have any production from, because, like you said, this team doesn't even run the ball. They don't even have didn't even have a running back on the squad. I mean, Mike Leach. I mean, they don't recruit running backs; they recruit receivers and put them at running back.
Yeah, so. Don't know, don't care.
Yeah, I mean it's all about the passing game.
For me, Maley and what Myers being gone is irrelevant. River, Craycraft, Don Williams return. Oh, guess who's back? Gabe Marks. He was out the 2014 season. He was the lead receiver in 2013. So you're going to be getting someone who is no stranger to having the ball in his hands and being the center of the offense coming back. Craycraft and Williams really started emerging near the end of the season. So for me, this is just another day in the office for this Washington State offense. I think the defense is still pretty bad. I think overall that they're still going to be absolutely susceptible to the pass. So teams will continue to hit them there. That's why you'll see them in shootouts with teams like Cal, because they just can't defend it.
Yeah, I mean, this defense, there's no really good place to look at it. New defensive coordinator coming in, so struggle. I mean, that's the best way to say it, struggle.
So the question of the hour is, who will reign supreme at the end of the year on this side of the conference?
I'm going to have to stick with Oregon. I think they've got too much talent on the offensive side of the ball, and the defense is good enough to possibly lead them to the Final Four. So I got to stick with Oregon.
I'm going to disagree with you, and I'm going to go with Stanford for a lot of the reasons we talked. I think the defense is still very strong, and I think you will see the next step taken by guys like Kevin Hogan to making this team a better, deeper team and they're one of my outside shots at potentially getting into the playoffs. I just don't know what the South winner, who I think I have in mind for the South winner, I don't know if they can get past them. So that's the biggest thing right there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's if Stanford is to take that next step, and I think they can with Hogan and these guys, but I just died that dude. Them in Oregon, I guess it comes down to Stanford's defense versus Oregon's offense, because Stanford's offense versus Oregon's D is pretty much a wash. So it comes down to, can Vernon Adams, who I fully believe is going to be a starter, can he grasp the playbook and be good enough, to distribute the football to all those, talented guys on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, that is definitely a question we are going to have to wait to see the answer to. Drew, if anyone wants to talk to you, disagree with you, send cuddly emoticons to you, where can they find you?
You can always send me cuddly anything at CFB Pros Drew. And if they want to send you angry emoticons, where can they find you, Nick?
They could find me at CFB Pros Drew. I mean, wait a minute.
You could. No, don't send the angry ones my way. But if you want to send the cuddly ones my way,
you set me up. There was no choice but to give them your Twitter handle to send the angry ones to. But you could send us any feedback you have on Facebook at College Football Pros, on Twitter at CFB Pros, on the internet at www.cfbpros.com. We will see you again next time as we finish up the Pac-12. See you then.